Hey everyone, I'm Bob Chatterton. I am the owner of Trinic and your host for Trinic Tips. And it's so good to be back here today. We spent last week out in South Dakota at a friend and customer of ours, Chad Guthmiller with Artisan Concrete Concepts. He provided an awesome canvas for us to throw up tons of cars and quite a bit of colors as well. And it was a cool project. It was bigger than most of us thought. We had about 10 people there helping. A couple shout outs to D1 and Snapchat there. So Braden and Russ, if you will. They, a couple high school kids that, man, they were cutting their teeth hard, and we kind of threw them into it pretty good. But the project was designed and put together by just a great guy, owner of Rock Sculptor, Warren Ness, who's my guest on the show today. And one of the things that we talked about out there that came up fairly frequently between all of us that were there is, how do you bid a job like this? It was a unique job, and it had a lot of new facets to it, things that just were a little bit out of the ordinary. And I'm sure Warren runs into it more than I normally do in his line of work out there, creating all these crazy things. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Mr. Warren Ness. Warren, what did you, how'd you make it back? Y'all good? What do you think of that project?
Yeah, I'm back in the saddle, as they call it out west, and long trip back, a fun trip as a whole, working on the project and getting back with everybody there, Brandon David Sayer, seeing Jeremy Wilkinson and those guys who contributed heavily to that project. And it was a great event, and I'm glad to be back and dig in for the next chapter.
Sweet. So, man, we sat around and talked for a while there about how do you figure a job like, if you were going to do this job for a paying customer, how do you figure that? And we had a bunch of different ways. I mean, I know back in my contracting days, I would try and count every nut and bolt and make sure that my materials list was all settled up, and and then maybe judge the job of obviously how difficult it is, which is going to relate to time. But just tell me how you do it. You're still doing these jobs for money.
Yeah, it's a great question. In this industry, I'll start off like this. In this industry, it seems to be a lot of uniqueness within each project. It seems to be in the concrete industry, whether it be a TFRC or carving, there's always a new little twist to a project, whether it's through the coloring or maybe it's through the formwork. And it's not your typical ham and egg on a bun every time, So with this particular project, it was very unique. When I arrived there, we kind of had an idea what we were looking for, what was a good fit for Chad, what was a good fit for Volga, South Dakota, and a good fit for as far as being profitable as we preach. And giving the guys a little bit of training, because we had behind the trials there filming the event as well. And so when you bid something like that, especially something new, it's been my experience and expertise I always look at it, a day rate, what you want to make per day, and that goes to the value of your time. What are you paying yourself, company owner or not, per hour, per day, however you want to look at it, for your value, time, your time in exchange for dollars. And secondly, you have a materials list. Those are hard costs. In this day and age, it's something to be mindful of in those, because they're constantly fluctuating. They can go up and down. I mean, the price of steel fluctuates. Steel is used a lot in our concrete industry. So that's just one facet to pay attention to as far as hard costs. And so I always look at what the hard costs are for the project. Sometimes that includes permitting, things of that nature, depending on the project. And I always mark that up a little bit, 15%, 10%. That accounts for the handling. Sometimes the companies will give you the wrong product by mistake. That's all a function of time. And so what you don't want to do is get yourself into a situation where you're negative, okay? So I always find that a time material, at least aspect, doesn't have to be, you don't have to communicate that portion to the client, but come down and really give it some proper thought on how much time do you think that's going to take? And then when you have that understanding, after you gave it some thought, put a little extra time on it, because if it's a new project, you're always going to learn something new. So go into that knowing that after version 1.0 is complete, you're going to come out of it knowing the lots of ins and outs, what not to do, what's more efficient. So you're kind of getting a little bit of OJT on some of those projects that are typically a new twist and saga to your everyday ham and egg on a bun concrete. So that's pretty much my guidelines in terms of quoting out something that's new. In that project, I feel like we were trend setting. We were dealing with like an exposed aggregate edge, which required time. Chad actually had to go make special runs to get that aggregate to 3/8P. Yeah, I guess spend as much time and thought into the preliminary phase. That's going to help you be successful in the field and stay healthy or black inside that profit.
Yeah, definitely. What about design time? I mean, you guys put significant time and thought into doing renderings and everything like that. Is that a normal occurrence for projects like that you present? Obviously, does that become part of your sales process? Do you present that to the customer? And if so, do you charge for it?
That is a great question, and it's a great sales tool. And I'll expand on that. So absolutely, unless it's something new, I mean, unless it's something I've done before 100 times, let's just say in concrete countertop world, gray concrete vanity, you had a picture already that you did it, and the customer wants a duplicate of that. So it wouldn't be necessary doing a drawing or rendering. You can show them something that you've already fabbed up, put a new title block on it, a new date, customer name, and call it done. On something like with Chad, where it's kind of tailor cut for that building, and absolutely the design. How do I say this? The design really pays huge dividends in the overall scope of the project. And a couple of different bullet points. Job site efficiency. It kind of gives you the mental gymnastics of how you're going to lay that project out when you can see it visually. It's kind of writing a to-do list. If you've had like to-do lists to where your mind feels a little overwhelmed with how the sequence of events is going to play out, and getting it out on paper really helps compartmentalize all those details. It doesn't have to even be finished. If you want to present that to the client, have a finished drawing, I think it's great. To use sales tool, it does increase your percentages of landing that project. A couple of things, it shows a level of professionalism. It instills confidence with your client that, hey, he just presented this drawing, looks very professional. I do like design aesthetics to it. Lastly, it debunks a lot of the flaws or dislikes from the client that could show up in the middle of the project, where if the client said, hey, I don't really like that. So from a contractual standpoint, you can go back to the drawing and reference it. And then obviously job site performance with all hands on deck. You never really see anybody in carpentry world or even HVAC or even like electrical work. There's a blueprint of some sort to follow. And when you have a lot of hands and bodies moving, I think it's important to at least have something out on paper from a visual communications perspective.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, especially for that, because we had, two different styles. We had the cork steel coming down and then the broken concrete. So it comes down to, all right, well, where does the reclaim peak? What do we do under the windows? What, does it creep up over here? What details do we put where? And, all that is really handy if everyone's on the same page. But like, say if that was a paying job, would you charge the client for that?
I do roll that in. I always look at time, time in exchange for dollars, right? I always look at, so that if there's a time factor involved with that, absolutely. Now, one thing I do want to note, Bob, is within that, if it's a new project, I would go ahead and take some money off the price if it's new to me, knowing that I'm not going to be as efficient and I don't expect the client to pick up that tab for my inefficiencies. Inefficiencies using that word loosely, but like I said earlier in our conversation, version 1.0, you always learn something from that. And I always look at it as like an OJT type of deal, where I'm going to learn something out of this. My portfolio is going to grow. This is something different. And we live in a kind of a show me type of everybody wants to see what you can create. They don't want to hear what you can create. They want to see what you've done. And
Right.
I always feel that if it's new and it's fresh and it provides value for my company, I'm going to go ahead and knock some off the price, knowing that I'm going to learn, and it's going to bolster my portfolio.
Sure. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do want to make this point. Actually, I kind of know I'm not, and I don't mean that in an arrogant way, but I want to make this point to people because I hear it all the time, especially with guys getting in this. Oh, I'm going to do a few projects, at cost, or, the term loss leader. We need to take that out of our language and just not have that in there anymore. Is you always want to make money, unless you're doing it literally for yourself, then obviously that's a different story. But even if you're doing it for friends or family, you still want to make money on it. You just do not want to lose. Mike Michalowicz, shout out to him, wrote a great book called Profit First. And the principle behind that is never lose. Just don't do that, and make sure that you cover your costs enough to make sure that, or ensure that doesn't happen. Because I know, man, you had days of thought and rendering and changes and layout, and that can be 4 of these sessions all in one, on a series of how we do that. But I think the point here is just account for it, don't forget about it. And then
Right.
when you're talking to the customer, depending on what their vision is versus what your vision is, and having to guess, like I think the discussion came up of, oh, they just give you a blank slate, you can do whatever you want. And I think it was Chad that was like, okay, I have no idea. But
Right.
I think his solution was, give me an idea where the budget lands so I can plan this. It's not, well, how much have you got to spend? I see you got a Mercedes in the driveway. It's, give me an idea of what you want to spend on this project, and I'll design it around that. And then we can sit down and go, yes, no, take this out, put that in, and work it out from there.
Right. Yeah. That's always like that question, right? Nobody really wants to hit off right off the jump in terms of what are you looking to spend here, or what's your budget. So then it turns into like 5-card, game of poker. I tell him a little lower, he goes a little higher. That's where I always felt that where I kind of hit the sweet spot is I want to make a fair wage for my talent or my craft, and I give them a fair price based off that. This is what it costs. Again, not to use the ham egg on a bun. If it's your typical ham and egg on a bun, then we know that cost is kind of fixed. You got one type of bun, the egg you really can't, modify, and I can go down the street and kind of find something similar for about the same price. So you start factoring scarcity and uniqueness and time and all of that. So it all does play a part. To touch back on what you were saying about never losing, good point. A little bit of mental conditioning behind that as well. I always felt like education is not free at any level. And sometimes you got to go to the school of hard knocks. And you do lose a little bit. I've lost. I've made a mistake in that I didn't really like. Affected me so much, I would, tear down a section and do it over. That just set me back $750 in the profit margin. But again, I always go, well, education is not free at any level. I paid for that. And I feel good about paying for that. I can sleep at night knowing I paid for that because I'm never going to do that again. So I walk away with that like, hey, you win some, you lose some, and you lick your wounds, and, you heal up and become smarter and stronger.
Truth. I mean, look, I've been, been in tons of those situations,
Mhm.
but you don't necessarily plan for it. I mean, if you plan ahead that says, hey, I'm going to do this on the cheap, and I know I'm going to probably lose a little bit of money, or the death sword of, well, I'll just break even. No, you won't.
Right.
Then you're planning for your demise right there.
Right
And
there.
because honestly, if you plan and you say, hey, I'm just going to go in, I'm going to break even. Well, that leaves nothing to cover the things that are going to come up, that always come up, especially if it's the first time. And I have a friend of mine, Michael Thompson, who one of his better lines is, how do first times go? Usually not very well.
Yeah.
So you're gonna
That's
have,
true.
you're gonna have those things that come up. I mean, heck, we saw it on those projects, and I mean, you got 6 guys that have been in this business for, long time. 30
Yeah.
years, 15 years, 10 years, 7 years.
Yeah.
And, we somehow decided it was going to be a good idea to use melamine as screed boards, and realized that it all swells. But, hey, that was a fun challenge. I would have been more pissed if we had to pay for it. But
Right.
but there's a great example. I mean, real life, hashtag true talk, real life, that it happens no matter who you are. So,
It really does, and I think you struck the head right there. There's always something, and when you go into the project knowing there's always something, you're kind of hovering for it. Where is it, and you always walk away with something. And yeah, back to the melamine. Like you said, close to 100 years collectively, summation of all the hands on deck out there. But like you said, you get in the project and there's always that gotcha. That that you could do better on the next one, or you become more efficient.
yeah, there's you mentioned the School of Hard Knocks, and man, that's the most expensive university on the planet right there. But usually you don't forget the lessons once you've learned them that way. That's for sure. So, hey,
That's the truth. That's truth.
so you mentioned like labor. Obviously, like I said, I think in the live video last week, I would never take on a project like this by myself. And obviously, none of the other guys would there either. That's why we all got together and collaborated on it. But, if you were going to take on a project like that with your laborers, how do you handle their labor? Like, how do you price that into the job?
Well, it's pretty simple. Like you take their wage, what you're paying them per day, simple arithmetic at that point, and where you use them. Let's just say your typical crew, like it'd be me and 2 other guys, a laborer, and then kind of somebody that's just helping me, shout on me, hey, go get me this, pick this up, watch me do this, go and replicate that, and then I would use their strengths to the company's advantage, and let's just say gathering the mud for me and putting me in a position to where I'm most profitable, as opposed to if the shoe doesn't fit well, I'm kind of forcing somebody doing something there's not really don't have any business doing that from an artistic perspective. Kind of like, hey, I can't expect someone to carve something up that doesn't have a carving experience. But what they can do, since they have flat work experience, I know I can use them and put them in situations and have them render out and use their services to 100%. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. You just have to know, as you move through each project, they're going to get better as time goes on. They clock more mileage on the trial or whatever you're doing. And then, but like I said, the projects most always change. We're very really are we, again, from a vertical. I know there's a lot of there's companies out there that crank out a lot of square foot in GFRC, but on the job or in the field is different than a climate controlled environment. And so as far as labor, it's simple arithmetic. You got 2, 3 guys. You can have too many guys out there depending on the project, something to be mindful of. Otherwise, it starts to be counterintuitive to the project. So pretty
Yeah,
much it.
definitely. I know, like, we used to mark our guys up 20% or 25% or something along those lines, and that's over the true cost, because remember,
Right.
if you're paying them legit and they're on the books, then, there's all those costs that go with it, insurance and everything else. So, just as a profit, conscientious of being profitable standpoint is, we could flip this conversation back to the beginning and talking to the people watching this is, really where it starts is you've got to know what your hard costs are. You need to know what your operating costs are. And a lot of people don't take that into consideration. Heck, a lot of people at business coach don't even know if they're profitable or not. So you got to start and know, hey, what's it take to keep the lights on? What's it take to keep my shop going, my truck running? What's it take to keep me insured? And if you're not insured, you darn sure better be, because that's a good way to sink a business in a heartbeat. And it's really not all that expensive, but you do have to divide that cost over the jobs that you do. And it's usually based on a sales, like an annual sales thing. So, you take whatever that is, insurance cost X, utility cost X, rent cost X, mortgage cost X. And if you're a sole proprietor and a business owner, whether you've got a separate shop or anything else, you need to include all your home expenses in that too, and your groceries and everything else. Because if you're not making more than that, then you're not profitable. And, if you're in a 2-income household, great. Take your spouse's income, off of those hard costs, just their base income, just to be safe. Because I always like to figure a little high there on the high side. But make sure you do that, because if not, it's all fun and cool to go out and do these projects, and even if the your customer's thrilled, they're super happy, they pay you with no issues, if you're not profitable, you're not going to be doing it for very long.
Yeah, that's great point. Yeah, that sheds some light on as far as the business admin side of things, right? Running the business, cutting checks, file permitting, like you said, cost of the mortgage of the building, tools, rent vehicles, things like that, gas cards, all the bookkeeping involved with all of that stuff. It all is a function of time, and it goes back to proper compensation and proper understanding the money required just to hit zero. And once you find that 0 point, then you got to know where you are in the profit stage, 10%, 15, 20, and then upwards and beyond.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it too, because really, essentially, when you walk out of that job site, you're first of all, you're in the hole. You've got work to do just to break even, so you're not making money first day, that's for sure, or at first anyways.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, this is every time I do one of these, I keep thinking, man, there's so many other things we could just go into it, take the deep dive and
could be an hour and a half.
Yeah, there's 15 subjects that came up just in this conversation that we've had. So we talked about, design time, make sure you figure that out. Obviously the materials, whatever you want for a markup, and knowing what your true costs are. And man, those are such just the basics, and they can go so far beyond that. And it can seem overwhelming to a lot of people. So honestly, I would encourage you guys that are watching this that, man, we're available. We want to create this community, much like we did out in Volga, South Dakota, of this great collaborations with, BTT there, capturing this. And actually shout out to them. It's behindthetrowels.com, and reach out to them, and you can see the videos, or you can buy very inexpensively the training video that was shot. You'll see all of us out there working. You'll see exactly how it goes up. Warren was doing an awesome job of fielding questions. And so, if you want to see the actual application of the products and the mud going up, and, all the, all the things we did wrong, we had a section fall off, and, because it happens. We had some cracks to repair because it was 80 degrees and blowing 50 miles an hour. So, less than ideal conditions, but all those things are real deal. They're going to happen. And those are the things that you need to figure into everything and account for to be profitable. So, man, Warren, I thank you so much for being on today. I'm sure that we're going to be back doing this and probably talking about this same project with a little bit of humor for all the things that we might have missed along the way and how that all goes. But everyone, look, really, I thank you so much. Reach out to us. Warren, how can guys get a hold of you if they got questions on anything?
Yeah, you can reach out. Feel free to email me at info@rocksculptor.com. I'm on all platforms of social media. My website, rocksculptortraining.com, and as well as my portfolio is rocksculptor.com. Both have contact information on those sites as well. So feel free to reach out, ask me any questions, whether you're a seasoned vet or whether you're just trying to put your foot into this exciting craft. Feel free to reach out.
Heck yeah. Guys, as always, I so appreciate you. Drop the comments below. Let us know, like I always say, what are you struggling with and what are you killing it at? We want to hear it all. Any questions that you have, if you don't mind putting them out there publicly, that's awesome. Be the icebreaker, because I'll guarantee if you've got that question, so do 100 other people that are looking at this and they're just too timid to ask. If you are one of those extreme timid ones that, hey, I might fall into that category from time to time myself, then you can reach out to Warren or reach out to myself. My email's super easy. It's bob@trinic.us. And you are more than welcome to ask any questions you got, business related, products related, technique related, anything along those lines. So drop your comments. Subscribe to our page, share the living daylights out of this, because people need this. I see so many people get into this business or the decorative concrete business thinking that, hey, we're going to make a go of this. And no, by no fault of their own, they usually don't last very long. And that just kills me. That shouldn't be the case. They should be profitable. There's a way to do it properly. There's a way to do it where you're killing it and not starving from it. So let us help you. We've been through that school of hard knocks that we've talked about a lot. And I love to tell everyone, especially when it comes to things like sealers and things like that, I've pretty much figured out every way how to not to do it. So, give me a ring and I'll see if I can shortcut that curve for you. So anyway, again, super appreciated. Comments below, subscribe to the page, share it, and we will see you next week. Thanks very much.
Bye, guys. Take care.